Yes, good
Morning.
morning, everyone. Thank you so much, GPAR. And I want to thank our guests for coming on this morning. I know the weather is a little yucky. I had a little technology problem, so I'm just really happy that we're able to join. But as I was saying, I'm really excited about this conversation. A few years ago, maybe about 2 years ago, Convergence came into Philadelphia. And I had the privilege of meeting Wendy Penn. She looked familiar to me, and then I realized that she had been affiliated with the National Association of Realtors, and she also has had relationships with all the minority groups, such as the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, Asian Real Estate of America Association, the National Hispanic Real Estate Professionals, LGBTQ Alliance, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm really excited about Wendy joining us from DC. Leslie Winder here in Philadelphia. Shout out to Philly. She and Michael have been doing a tremendous job in terms of communicating and getting all of the real estate groups and alliance, no matter whether they're for profit or nonprofit, having the conversation about the importance of convergence. So I'm happy, and I hope that you will enjoy this conversation today. Nia Duggins, thank you so much for coming on from NAR. And so I will begin with the questions. I believe our guests have already introduced themselves, right? And that was recorded. Convergence is an initiative of the Mortgage Bank Association. Wendy, can you give a high-level overview of what Convergence is?
Yes, thank you. I'd be happy to. Convergence is an initiative to expand access to homeownership with a particular emphasis on underserved communities. And what underserved looks like in communities varies. And so we try to follow the data to figure out who we need to most focus on when we're serving that. And Convergence leverages the community resources, expertise, knowledge at the local level to really drive initiatives and bring in partners from the national level to strengthen what already exists and then create new efforts. Always like to stress that Convergence is a framework. It is not a prescriptive initiative because every city is different. I'm sure everyone on this call understands that all real estate is local, all housing issues are local. So it's not about anyone or any organization from a national perspective coming in and saying this is what you should do. It's really about focusing on what already exists and enhancing that. So the framework that Convergence provides is really about breaking down silos and helping practitioners, nonprofit organizations, lenders, housing counselors, all the folks that are involved in the housing ecosystem work better together because all these organizations, all these professionals are already working on efforts, but sometimes there are challenges with collaboration. And so Convergence brings in a framework that is led by a local host organization, in this case, it's Urban Affairs Coalition in Lisk, Philadelphia, to break down those silos and get people more coordinated, collaborating, and working together. Convergence has, in addition to Philadelphia, two other established sites, Memphis, Tennessee, and Columbus, Ohio, and Baltimore, Maryland will be joining the network next year. And the one other point that I'll make before we go into the next question is, yes, this is an initiative that NBA launched in 2019. And I've noted that there are a variety of national partners like trade associations like NAR and others who have worked with Convergence at the local level since our first city launch, which was at Memphis in 2020. Recognizing that we had so much knowledge, so much expertise with all of these other national organizations that we're working with, NBA joined with these groups, about 12 other organizations, to form the Convergence Collaborative. And I know we'll talk a little bit about that later, but the Collaborative is a nonprofit organization that was established really with the focus of expanding the Convergence network by bringing on new cities and also working to replicate what we're learning in each location, because the solutions that are developed can not only help the cities where it's in place, but those learnings can be shared more broadly across different markets where there might not be a convergence initiative. So the goal is to really not just keep all the good stuff in the cities where we are, but to share it more broadly. And the Convergence Collaborative is the first step in making that happen.
Great, thank you. So access to affordable housing due to lack of inventory, construction costs, prohibitive zoning, legislation, et cetera, is a problem nationwide. How and why was Philadelphia chosen to be a part of the program?
A great question. And as you said, all of those issues are present in lots of places. And I will say I should go back a step and mention that the four gaps that Convergence focuses on closing are the information gap. So dispelling the myths and misperceptions that sometimes keep people out of homeownership. They'll self-select out because they think they don't qualify, they need perfect credit. The trust gap, people will again self-select out because of fear of being mistreated by the individuals that are part of the home buying process. The resource gap, sometimes there are need for down payment assistance, closing cost assistance, appraisal gap, all of those sorts of things that create barriers. And then market gap, so looking at housing supply issues. So Convergence works to close all of those gaps through the collaboration of the professionals that I mentioned. Philadelphia was a great city for the Convergence model because activities were already going on in all four of those areas. Professionals were already working to address those issues. And there were, part of it is the willingness of participants because there are a lot of cities where similar work is happening, but we were also looking for a location where there were already established networks of practitioners trying to work on these things and the willingness to work together. So just because people have the ability, it doesn't mean they're willing to collaborate. But we saw the partners in Philadelphia with a willingness to engage in the convergence model and really work in a collaborative way. And so that's one of the key reasons Philadelphia was selected.
Very good. Nia, NAR is a partner of the Convergence Collaborative. Can you explain the realtor role, which I'm very excited about?
Yes. Um, As you mentioned, NAR is a proud partner of the Convergence Collaborative, and we work alongside Wendy and other partners as we look to expand the initiative, but also just to refine and enhance what already exists. The role of the realtor is very critical, right? It's a team effort when we talk about housing affordability, attainability, and sustainability. So once we are able to get new home buyers into homes in the communities that are being served, it's important that they're able to sustain that. And the realtor is the common denominator and common thread in helping with that, right? So helping the home buyers identify homes within their budget and that they're interested in, and then once they're in the homes, making sure that they understand what it means to sustain home ownership and helping them along that journey. And so it is truly a partnership, and as part of this collaborative, we understand that no one real estate professional can work in a silo. They have to work collaboratively with lenders, with community partners, with housing counselors. And so each professional plays a critical role in shepherding that process and really helping the consumer and clients get into home ownership. So the realtor plays a critical role, but so do all of the other professionals. And so I think it's important to understand that this collaborative is a model of what collaboration looks like and why it is successful because of the fact that we understand it takes partnership.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I really believe that it's important for the community, no matter where it is, that they don't look at realtors or licensees, forget about the licensees, they don't count, but realtors, that we are community partners and that we are concerned about increased home ownership. And I think that voice really needs to be heard. And I think using the avenue of convergence has been excellent. I know that I've been on calls where there's been over 100 different partners just within the Philadelphia area who wants to see greater home ownership. And as many of us know on this call, our mayor of Philadelphia, Sherelle Parker, she wants to have this 30,000 initiative. And I think with convergence happening in the background is going to make that even a greater success. Leslie, the Urban Affairs Coalition seems to be uh-oh. I'm gonna need you to jump in there for me, Lexi. I lost it. Can you help me, Lex?
Hi, Annette. Lexi got cut off. I'm in a quiet car, but I will add to what that question is.
Thank
I'm sorry to not be there live with everyone. I apologize for traveling interjections. But the question was really about how the Urban Coalition is a natural partner. So how was that selection made, and what are you doing sort of grassroots here in Philadelphia?
Sure. Let me make sure I'm off mute. UAC is known as a convener. We are the home for nonprofits in the city of Philadelphia. In short, we unite government, business, neighborhoods, individuals to improve the quality of life and build wealth in urban communities and in solving some of the um, issues at the ground level. UAC came out of the civil rights movement in the late 60s and is the kind of epitome, if you will, of public-private partnership. That's really what it does. And as I said, it is known as the convener. Quite honestly, our work from a programmatic standpoint has not been as strong in the housing space. But what we do is have the ties to these organizations. And because of that, we're able to come in and bring people together. And that's really how we were identified. MBA, Wendy Penn began working with through LISC and Andy Fishkoff. And Andy's like, if we're going to be here, we've got to have UAC at the table. And it was a great timing for us. I've heard a lot of the things and, catchwords that I use, collaboration, not collision, is it? Because we talk about the silos and there are so many things that are happening throughout the city that have been happening throughout the city. I think Wendy touched on it, but one of the reasons that Philadelphia was selected is because of its ecosystem of work that is already being done and some of those partnerships that are already taking place. But how do we bring everyone together? And that's really what the Convergence platform has allowed us to do. We have this broad-based Philadelphia area, though most of us are based in Philadelphia, not all are, in the Philadelphia area platform now of the realtors, lenders, community organizations, housing counselors, developers that are all at the table addressing these silos. And I think that that is incredibly unique. And it's really opened the door to further partnerships. I don't know if there's going to be, big signature programs that come out of this, but what happens and what we've already seen happen is that the existing programs are expanding. They're being developed in a different way because they have more voices at the table. And that's been the exciting thing about being part of the Convergence platform.
If I could just add on to that before you go to the next question, I can't stress enough the importance of having a strong lead organization for these initiatives. It's demonstrated even in the question of who's in Philadelphia. Leslie's in Philadelphia. Wendy's not in Philadelphia. Nia's not in Philadelphia. So it doesn't. The framework is important. The intellectual capacity that the national organizations bring because they have a view of what's going on across the country is critical. They help with the strategic guidance, but the work happens at the local level. And as Leslie described, the role that UAC plays as that convener is critical. It's mission critical. The initiative wouldn't be but for that role that they play, bringing together all of these partners. So when a host organization is selected, it is very important to select one that is trusted in the community. Leslie mentioned UAC goes back to, the civil rights era. So a longstanding organization that's trusted by community partners, that's known in the community, where they say, can you come to this meeting? Someone will say, yes, not because they know Convergence, they know Leslie, they know UAC, they know what these organizations stand for, and they have the ability to break down those silos that we've been talking about and really get people at the table. And I also appreciate what Leslie said about the enhancement or the expansion of existing programs, because sometimes the answer isn't always to create something new. It's to look at what already exists and how can Convergence bring additional resources? How can it bring additional voices, additional attention, those sorts of things. So it's not always about the shiny new thing. Sometimes it's really about taking stock of what already exists and figuring out how to enhance it.
I'm glad that was spoken about. Leslie, can you speak a little bit about the different committees? If you happen to have, I know it's a few of them. Do you happen to have those? To speak on it?
I may be able to do this off the top of my head. And these are the work streams or subcommittees, if you will. For the Convergence Philadelphia. They do differ for Convergence Columbus or Memphis or any of the other collaborators that may come on board. And as we mature, if you will, some of those will shift. But we've got outreach and education, and the focus there is both from a network standpoint in terms of our partners, but also from the community and the home buyers. Thank you very much, Michael. Outreach and education, is it programs and products and programs, which is started off really doing the deep dive because that was the group that kind of looked at the landscape. What are the programs that are already out there? What are the products that are already out there? What is it we're looking to build on, enhance, or change? Preservation and sustainability, and that's particularly significant with the Mayor's Home Initiative, and I know that we'll talk on that a little bit more, that the 30,000 units is not just about new units. In fact, it's a greater percentage of it is, I think, 16.5 or something along those lines, is preserved units. Housing supply, obviously, and because we can preserve all the units we want, but at the end of the day, we need to have more homes available. And how does that achieved? And so working through local developers and looking at the landscape and what options and opportunities are there. And then research and evaluation. Obviously, it's looking at the data, looking at kind of where we started, what other information is needed, and how are we using that to kind of gauge, mark our effectiveness.
No, that's good. And the reason why I asked you, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot because I know it's a few committees and I personally can't remember them all. But in addition to that, on the preservation side, the whole conversation about tangled titles, I know there's a lot of time invested in that and trying to come up with resolutions for that. So I encourage you all, if you want to learn more about convergence and you want to participate on these committees, please don't hesitate to reach out to Lexi. I believe she has the information. There's a link. And you have the meetings, what, once a month, is it, Leslie?
I think we're at every other month now.
Oh, okay. Okay. Very good. All right. So research from the NBA shows that the biggest challenges to home ownership among Black, Hispanic, and other diverse households are the gaps in information, trust market, and resources. Can you share with us what Convergence Philadelphia is doing to address these challenges locally and in any other city? And of course, anybody or all, you all can jump in, doesn't matter who.
Yeah, actually, I want to start that. One of the things that I guess has been alluded to in the overview and in my comments as well as Nia's is that this is a practitioner focused collaboration. And so we are working on the professional side, the lenders, the realtors, housing counselors, et cetera, to look at the issues and how we can collectively work together to break down the walls, get rid of some of these silos. And then it's using the community partners and all of the other voices at the table that have relationships, that have the cachet, if you will, in the home buying market to spread the word about not so much about convergence, but about the work that is happening, about the programs that are available, about the opportunities that exist. So again, it's kind of taking an inside look at the home buying industry, everything from, as I said, as soon as someone says they're interested in buying the house, and that should be, hopefully they're with a housing counselor, and then understanding how they build their team, and their team is the realtor and the lender and all of the other folks that are involved in that process, straight through to not the closing, but what happens to help you, how do we help you stay in your home? So it's everybody that is involved in that ecosystem is at the table. And those are that's where we're kind of focused, is what can we do as an industry-wide group to try to address the various issues.
Yes. And, I can't say it enough to the public. If they have any kind of housing issue, housing counseling, there's money that's available oftentimes. And many of us know when we're dealing with buyers about the grants and, the buyer having to go through the program. So it's excellent that the housing counselors are at the table, and several of the realtors from all the different real estate trade associations are there as well. Does anyone else want to kind of mention anything regarding about the research from MBA? And by the way, MBA is Mortgage Banker Association.
Mm-hmm.
I will just talk a little bit about the other cities. As I mentioned, Convergence is not prescriptive. Each city does something different. And I know the question wasn't specifically about programs, but I do want to just touch on a couple things that's happening in the other cities to give you a sense of how Convergence does play out. In Memphis, the host organization is United Housing, and they are, one of the key things they focus on is development of homes. And so they do other things. They do counseling and other aspects of the home buying, home ownership process. But the Memphis market is different. There's a lot more available land. There is a lot more homes that are either in foreclosure or in land banks. And so they have a different type of opportunity when they look at the market issues. So they have put an emphasis on working with emerging developers to support the efforts of these smaller developers, and also actually constructing homes. And one I thought innovative thing that they did earlier this year was they had a land expo. So similar concept of a home expo, but it was focused on developers, and the idea came out of one of their work streams, a conversation. There was an organization in the city that had, I can't remember how many vacant lots they owned, but they were spending $1 million a year maintaining these lots. And there, at the same time, there were developers who wanted access to these lots, but they didn't really understand the process. They didn't know how to go about all the things that you need to construct homes. And so the thought was, well, we have these developers who are maybe building on average 5 houses a year, but they want to expand their capacity. But one of their biggest obstacles is access to land. And from that, the idea came to have this expo where they brought together the land bank, the organization that had all these other lots. So several of the larger holders of land in Memphis and reached out to the community, to the network of developers that were engaged with Convergence and in other ways, and had a half-day event where the developers came, the people who own the land presented, this is how you access our lots. We don't clear, some of them you have to know that they don't clear it before, it's kind of as is. Other ones will clear the lot. So all this information that they otherwise wouldn't have had was presented in one day. And then all of these landholders had a table where you could come and ask specific questions. And in that one, 3 or 4 hour event, there was so much information that was shared that otherwise, wouldn't have happened if Convergence hadn't coordinated all that. And then in Columbus, thinking again a little more about some of their issues, they have a focus on accessory dwelling units. They don't have as much land. They don't have all the things that Memphis does, but there's also not a good understanding, they thought, of community members about accessory dwelling units. So they formed a concept of having house parties. And I know that term is used differently. I know Philadelphia had some house parties too, but in this one, it was actually a homeowner hosted a party. Convergence Columbus provided the resources, the money for catering, invitations, all these things, and questions to have conversations about accessory dwelling units so people understood them more. They didn't build any, but now people are more informed about the process. So those are just a couple of examples. And I didn't mean to focus on housing development. That just those were the two that popped into my head. But just to show you that each city uses the existing resources and the willing participants in a different way to address their particular issues.
No, I'm glad you mentioned it. We did send out to our members, and several of our members were at the 4 different locations, the house party here in Philadelphia. I love the concept. I love music. So we had the DJ and, some community people came out. I mean, it was just an excellent opportunity for the community to meet these Convergence partners so that they know what their resources are. One of the things that I'm always speaking about is the importance of marketing to the consumers, because they just don't know. People don't necessarily go online and research things. So they really depend on us as realtors to make sure we provide them that information as well as the resources. At the end of the day, our bottom lines can possibly increase. Does anyone else have anything you want to add in regards to, convergence in Philadelphia and that type of thing in any other cities?
Not a whole lot about the other cities, but I will say one of the things that makes this very unique is that it's not led from the federal government, right, or from necessarily federal partners in a sense that we aren't driving it, right? Like it is very much so the community that is leading a lot of the efforts. And that's important because the communities in the respective cities, they know what they need, right? Like in Philadelphia, you are best suited to say what is needed there and what the unique needs are. And so that is one of the things that's very important. But even as Convergence looks to expand, that's key for how we are informed as partners, right? To understand what is the best way to come in and support as Wendy mentioned, and also Leslie mentioned, what is already existing. One of the things through NAR research as well that came out this year through one of our reports is that the median home age of a first-time home buyer is 40 years old this year for the first time in history. And so what that says is that we still have a lot of work. There are not enough federal initiatives that are taking place, and so states and localities really are having to step up and fill in the gap in a way that they have always, but now it's a greater demand. And so that also means that a lot of public-private partnerships, such as Convergence, the Convergence Collaborative, and others, will have to really step up to help and fill in the gap in many ways. And so the education and information is very important. And as you mentioned, Annette, it's about meeting consumers where they are. Where are the people and how can we connect with them where they are to let them know that this is attainable. And if you can get in and you can access home ownership, then do it as soon and as early as possible because that's where wealth can begin. And so that's why it's very important.
Very good. Thank you. And I just want to add that GPAR, we've been participating within Convergence for close to 2 years. So I'm really happy about that. And just actually excited about knowing NAR, their name is out there as well. Thank you for being a supporter. As you know, the mayor has her home initiative with many of the programs geared towards subsidized rentals and home ownership. How are you working with the Philadelphia government to move these policies forward? Anyone can answer that.
Well, again, I'll start that since we're the ones here doing that. We're lucky. Again, I talk about the table, if you will, that's been set through Convergence Philadelphia. So many of the folks that are involved in Convergence are on the various subcommittees and roundtables. Anyone here, and if you're in Philadelphia and you know the mayor, she likes to get everybody involved. And so she's doing a whole bunch of roundtables, a whole bunch of subcommittees to look at issues. I don't think that there is one of those related to the home initiative that doesn't have somebody that's involved with Convergence on the table. So they're getting reports back, which is great. We are working more and more with DHCD and the various committees there. In particular, we with Andy Toy, who I think might be on the call, I'm not sure, with the Home Appraisal Equity Program. We've met with Mark Dodds, Angela Brooks, who is the new head, as they are looking at the programs and coming to us again as a resource to say, how can we better work together? And that's really what this whole thing is about. So we have been, I said, very, very fortunate that all of the subcommittees or roundtables have some representation from Convergence there. We get the report backs on what's happening and have the ability to at least weigh in or have the discussions at our work streams about what is happening at the city level, and then feed that information back to whoever is the representative, if you will, that's at the table. So there's an open dialogue, and the more that we talk about Convergence, the more that we find that folks from the city are reaching out to us to get a little bit more information, because they recognize that we've got this this great collaborative partnership or platform where there's so many people that are involved there. So utilizing that to better work together.
Just want to add to that, and I love what you said because it's a reality. I think what I am seeing is leadership in its finest, meaning bringing the people together, because that's the best way to come to a solution. So I'm really excited about that. And I know for myself, I learned a lot via Convergence and also the initiatives that the mayor has been doing. I want to give a shout out to our good friend Andy Toy, who a few weeks ago had a very successful appraisal event. So, hi, Andy. Um, Nia, what are some actionable creative steps that you have seen happening around the country? Are there federal policies we should be keeping an eye on? And I know you kind of spoke about the Fed, so whichever way you want to answer that.
Yeah, so one of the things, I mean, of course, there are some bills that are looking to expand homeownership, like the Road to Housing, and there are, definitely bills that have been introduced in Congress this session, during this session. I will say that overall, we're in a deregulatory environment, and so we're not seeing as much. We know that the government was shut down for 43 days. So we are happy that it is reopened, but a lot of state and local officials and governments, as I've mentioned, are having to really step up to fill in the gap where traditionally we have seen, the federal government offer a lot more support. To that end, housing supply and affordability is an issue that Congress is keenly aware of, and they understand the constraints of housing in terms of housing costs have not come down, right? Even though we've come out of the pandemic, we've been post-pandemic for a while now, but housing costs have continued to rise. Inventory continues to be constrained, and the cost to build is also very high. And even to we talk a lot about existing housing stock, but even to update a lot of that existing housing stock is very expensive. We are seeing in some cities some innovations where we're seeing some conversions of commercial real estate into residential. We actually just held our annual conference in Houston a few weeks ago, and so there are some conversions that are taking place there. Houston also, when we talk about, real estate being very local, is very unique in that their zoning is pretty much open, right? So that they're very flexible when it comes to building, and there are not a lot of constraints around zoning and in Houston. But we also understand zoning and permitting is a key piece of development as well. And so, as local governments look around and look at efficiencies, that is one area that sometimes we hear that it's somewhat challenging for builders when it comes to the permitting process. But over the next few years, states and localities will really drive um, inventory, right? They'll drive inventory. They'll be innovative in ensuring rather that there are new homes on the market. We've also seen a lot of innovation also in Atlanta. Where I know that they are doing a lot around expanding housing, just like in Philadelphia, but also there's a key focus around workforce housing to ensure that essential workers can live and work in communities that they serve. So we're talking about teachers, nurses, firefighters. And so there is a renewed sense and urgency around workforce housing and why it's important. We at NAR have an employer assisted housing course. And really, what employer assisted housing looks at is how employers can also have a stake in the game when it comes to expanding housing. What type of incentives and down payment assistance and other resources can be offered by employers when we think about who major employers are in a lot of metro cities? We understand that they play a critical role not only in helping to employ several potential consumers and clients and home buyers, but also they can be helpful in helping to expand home ownership. So we can think about hospitals, universities. They all are partners that we should continue to work with as we think about expanding access to home ownership.
Glad you know, I'm so happy you brought up two key things that we are involved in Philadelphia, and one of them, meaning the Greater Philadelphia Association of Realtors, we just recently, the board approved of us having a commercial committee. So I really appreciate what you spoke about. I wish we were Houston. I mean, we would be on top of the world. No zoning. Woo! And the employee assistance program, it's amazing to me that I think in Philadelphia, it might have started around the time of Mayor Michael Nutter. And a lot of the people in Philadelphia that work at the universities and hospitals, it's amazing to me, a lot of them do not know. And so, to your point, information is key. And the more we know as realtors, the more we will be able to assist our clients, because that's some money that somebody could be leaving at a table that they're entitled to.
Let me
So
jump
that's
in there. Yeah, if you don't mind.
sure.
One of the things that UAC does is administer, we have a program called Philadelphia Home by Now, which is an employee assisted housing program where we do matching grants. Our primary employer partners are, just as Nia mentioned, hospitals, universities, some of the larger anchor institutions. And some of them have very confined, restricted kind of benefits, and I say that only in terms of the catchment and where the employee might purchase the house. But it is all about local community economic development too. So it's keeping dollars in those neighborhoods, and we matched that assistance up to $4,000. I know that the city is looking at doing a they're looking at programs. They're not, at a position where they're going to launch something, immediately. But I know Baltimore, for example, has an employer-assisted housing geared toward the city employees, the firefighters, the teachers, the nurses, that sort of thing as well. And it's critical. We are, hoping to expand the number of grants that we can give out. And the only way to really expand that is by having more employers at the table. So looking at, and for our program, it's a $500, I call it $500 buy-in. So someone could, a very small nonprofit or a very small business could offer their employees something as low as $500 toward their closing costs or settlement costs. Down payment assistance, and then we'll match that. So now someone's going to the table and they've got an additional $1,000 that doesn't have to come out of their pocket. And I said those numbers increase is knowing that we go up to $4,000. So it is a vital program, and it's really working with some of the larger organizations so that they can take a look at how they can best serve their employees.
Very good. That was great information. And I need to utilize it myself. Um, let's see here. So, what are the next steps for growing this program nationwide? Do you have success stories that you can share? I think some have been shared by oh my goodness, Wendy. So I'm sorry, it's
That's
early in the
okay.
morning for me.
No problem. Yeah, I would love to talk a little more about how we're expanding the impact of Convergence. The initiative, when it was created, the goal was never just to leave the good ideas and the resources and best practices in the cities where we have the place-based initiatives, but to share it more broadly. And so over the past years, as the number of cities have grown and their work has grown, we have made efforts to share that information through things like presentations at MBA conferences, speaking at other organizations. I know someone from my team spoke at NAR's Housing Opportunity Committee last year, and then doing webinars and sharing information like this. One of the big initiatives that we have for next year is to create a website, a web-based resource that is for practitioners, where we will share more of these examples, write-ups of case studies, examples of agendas, of things that have taken place in each of the cities with the goal of inspiring others to replicate these programs. So even if there's not a full convergence in a market where someone operates, they can see what happened in Memphis or Columbus or Philadelphia. And that website will also be a place where our partners like NAR can share information that not only realtors can access it, but other housing practitioners, so that counselors and loan officers and others will have the ability to see what's going on in convergence, but also be able to take a look and say, oh, I didn't know that realtors did XYZ. This is maybe I should tap more into what's going on at my local association of realtors. So the goal in the Convergence Collaborative, I'll say, is really driving that effort to spread the word about convergence and also to replicate and expand. And I am grateful for the partnership of the organizations that are part of the collaborative, not only because they are bringing their intellectual capacity and their strategic guidance, but quite frankly, they're also bringing financial resources because it takes money to expand. It takes money to replicate. It takes money to even promote and share. Oftentimes there might be a great program and there's money to administer it, but there's no money to market it. And so we're really trying to figure out ways to spread the word about what's happening in convergence. And none of that would be possible without the partners that are engaged through the collaborative and also at the local level. So we really appreciate that partnership, and hopefully we'll have more ability for individual practitioners starting early next year, quarter one, to be able to go to a website and just learn more about what's happening in convergence.
Very good. Anyone else like to make any comments? Okay. What role do you see that realtors play in partnering with your organizations and addressing the affordable housing discussion and helping to move Convergence Philadelphia forward for our neighbors?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, realtors play a critical role. I think continuing to look at innovative ways, and to look at best practices from other cities. I think ongoing education is helpful, and cities want to see, and organizations alike want to see what are best practices that have been tested, that have been tried, and that have been successful. It costs a lot of money to be able to invest in programs like Convergence, the Convergence Collaborative. And so it makes sense for institutions to be able to say these are best practices. This is how we can track in terms of data and outcomes, because that is what helps funding sources, right? Like that's what's critical for funding sources. So I think being able to help tell those stories of what has worked, what has been successful, what does public-private partnership look like, and how can it thrive? And it thrives when all partners are truly engaged and involved, and they're able to have constructive information sharing. When Leslie talked about the way that they and the organization is plugged into what is happening, and what the mayor is working on, that's very critical. I mean, that's vital information if you are a realtor. It's vital information if you're a developer. I think one of the other things that is very key is that many realtors are staples in their communities, and so they are going to the council meetings. They are meeting with their members of Congress. They are meeting with city planners, and they understand what is up and coming in various communities, and that's critical, right? It's critical, and that's invaluable information. One, from a partnership standpoint, when we look about and think about what is critical as we look to expand resources and support for the Convergence Collaborative, but it's also vital when we talk about helping everyday consumers and clients attain home ownership. And so that's extremely critical. And understanding what is accessible, right? Not every person that may come may need to just access homeownership, but they may need resources to figuring out tangled title and heirs property challenges, or they may need resources around home preservation. I know in a lot of cities, there are many seniors that are aging in place. And so, but their homes are, they need extreme repairs. And so being able to say that there are programs and resources available around housing preservation is also key, because a lot of those homes may be passed down, right, to future generations and to heirs in that family. And so making sure that we can sustain and help them maintain their homes is also vital.
If I could
Great.
add just another comment about the role of the realtor, the comment of collaboration and working together has been the theme of the conversation. It's really the theme of convergence and why it works. And I want to focus a little bit on sometimes the trust issues that exist among housing professionals. So, I mentioned at the top the four gaps that Convergence works to address, and I was talking about them, as it relates to home buyers, but there also can be information and trust gaps among professionals. And so the realtor plays such a critical role because often a potential home buyer will come to a realtor before they go to anyone else in the home buying process. And so if individual realtors are able to establish relationships with loan officers, with counselors, in the kind of the safe space of convergence, then that only goes farther to help those potential buyers. Because organizations don't really form relationships, it's the people within the organization. So it's one thing to have organization A, B, and C at the table, but it's really the individuals, it's the practitioners who are at the table, it's the practitioners who are developing those relationships. And so being able to attend networking events or education events that Convergence Philadelphia hosts, not only are you getting the information, but you're face to face with peers. You're face to face with someone who might be, helping your client down the road. So it's not only breaking down silos among, professionals in broad categories, but breaking down silos among practitioners who work together and see each other, every day, that work in communities together. And so, realtors really have a role to play, I think, in that leadership role of being part of that connective tissue that is so critical to convergence.
Yeah, let me add another thing in there, and both of you kind of touched on it, and it's not so much, it's normalizing housing counseling and home buyer education. And when I say that is because often people think that you go to a housing counselor to fix something.
Mm-hmm.
They have maybe their credit score isn't quite there. There, might be some other issues. Maybe they've got a problem with a house they're trying to get out of. Whatever the case, it is not always seen as the place to go to learn what you don't know. And if you've never purchased a home before, you don't know anything. And I think realtors do a great job in helping their potential home buyers along. But it's really the housing counselor space that can kind of give them, okay, this is who all of these people are. This is what they do for you. This is how you build your team. And so often, as I said, people don't understand the role of housing counseling and home buyer education. I look at the website, the city's website, for example, and I mentioned this to DHDD folks just last week, that when you go in there, it lists all of the certified HUD counseling agencies throughout the city, but the reasons for going to them start with foreclosure, eviction issues, possibly tangle title, and about the fifth bullet down the list out of maybe seven is homeownership. And to me, and homeownership is not for everyone. I don't want to, skirt around that either. But it should be a positive
Mm-hmm.
learning resource for people that have never gone through this process. And again, how we normalize that whole the term and the experience, I think, is incumbent on all of us.
I think that's an excellent point, Leslie.
So, Leslie, maybe you can move housing, home buying up at the top. Maybe you can tell the city that.
Oops, you went on mute.
I had one conversation with them, I'm not going to let it go. Because I said, I look at the site and like, this makes no sense at all. And as I said, for people, there are a lot of people that are at a certain income. Maybe their parents always had homes. Maybe that, and they just figure this isn't for me. But if they have never gone through the process, they don't know. And as what I tell people all the time, if you've never gone, you're a first-time home buyer, you're going to be missing out on a lot of programs that are available only for people that have gone through home buyer education and housing counseling. So you've got to start there. Anyway, that's my soapbox. I'll keep.
Yeah, they want to get the grant money pretty much. And I just want to say that in the city of Philadelphia, there's almost like 43 programs, between developers, homeowners, buyers. So I'm really excited about that information being brought home to the consumers, because information is key. I think we might have had some. Go ahead, Leslie. You on
And
mute.
this kind of speaks to this. Talk about a success story. One of the things that's come out of Convergence Philadelphia is a down payment assistance tool that we have. And there was still a lot of information to be added to it. But it is a online tool that you can go to and plug in your information, and what will come up is potential down payment assistance programs that you might be eligible for.
Very good. Thank you very much. I think we might have some questions in the chat. I know that Kate is traveling. I do want to say that Michael and Leslie, Michael is the one that's putting in a lot of links in the chat. So please retrieve that information and save it. Kate, I don't know if you could help me. I know you're trying to travel, but are you there? Trying to see if you can go into the chat for me, but if not, I'll try to hit it.
A lot of the questions in the chat have been about, someone asked about just finding information on the housing assistance through an employer. Again, Michael's been great to keep everyone updated in real time on the different resources through UAC, their contact information, social media links. And I think, Les, just a common theme I'm hearing here is just knowledge is power, and knowing where these resources are, how to access them, so that, again, it's not in silos, as Wendy has said repeatedly. And so I think that I don't see any other questions. Michael's, as I said, been on top of it throughout the chat.
Right.
Unless anyone else has questions they'd like to add now.
And also, if there's any announcements or anything that you all want to make, or anything you think that we should know. You did an excellent answering of questions, very detailed, really appreciative of that. Want to make sure we're not missing anything. Michael, when is the next meeting?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Our next meeting is Wednesday, December 17th. We're not having the typical breakouts. We may be having a presentation from our friends in Convergence Memphis, actually. But also tomorrow we are having a end of the year gathering. It will be at 1650 Arch Street, 21st floor. And so that'll be from 4 to 6 p.m. There'll be some appetizers, some refreshments, and we will talk about our 2025 accomplishments, some of the things that we're looking at going into 2026, and it'll allow for some networking opportunities. We're expecting about 40 to 50 people. Should be a great time. I'll drop a link to the Eventbrite into the chat. It is free, but you do need to be registered, as we need to make sure you could clear through security in the building. But we'd love to have you all if you're not already registered.
Michael, I look forward to seeing you all there tomorrow. And I want to add to the Realtors, we've had these great presenters. And one of the things that I really wanted to see, and I have seen it during my term, is for us to be present. Oftentimes, the world sees us as just salespersons, and we all know that we're more than that. We're advocating. That's the purpose of this call. We're trying to help our future clients and our existing clients. But it is very important for us to take the initiative to be present. And so I really appreciate many of you that are on the call, and those who are not have been participating on the Convergence calls. I really encourage you to continue doing so. And you just never know what your opportunities are. Relationships are very important. Is there anything else, Lexi, or anyone in the audience? Anybody have any questions? We're at 9:58. We have the greatest people on this call who are making Convergence a success, and I'm really happy that they came on today. So I'm not hearing any questions. Lexi, do you have anything? Kate, anything?
No further announcements on our part, unless any GPAR members that are on the call would like to participate in our volunteer shift at MANA on December 15th at 1:30 p.m.
Great. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful day. Be safe out there and really appreciate everyone joining us today.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.